The stage of the weekend. We're almost through. We saved the best for last, right, folks? I just want to say to our panelists and to everybody that's been with us this weekend, thanks for welcoming us into your community. And we've got a lot of folks to thank, so I'm going to run through that real quick. We have a lot of folks to thank for organizing the experiences that you'll enjoy today and that you've been enjoying. So first, for the panel, I want to say thank you to our hosts, Riney Farms, and to our speakers, Jim Gilles. I'll just say your name. You can raise your hand because I think it's a little bit out of order from where you're sitting versus where I'm talking. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. We're all good? Okay. All right.
I can hear you just fine.
So we got Jim Gilles of HillView Farms. Joan Hayden of Hayden Farms and Hayden Electric. And her husband's back there too. I talked to him. He's also a real nice guy. And then we got Keith Riney Farms, where we are today, right now. And Cole Hamilton, who is the 2023 Young Farmer Association's Member of the Year. Farmer over in Eastern Daviess County, and is a seed rep for Syngenta. Did I say that right? Yeah. Okay. We're rocking. We're rocking, we're rolling. And last but not least, Chloe Ebelhar. Ebelhar. Chloe Ebelhar. Thank you. And she is a UK Ag Ed major. I want to also thank our funding partners, Art of the Rural, National Endowment for the Arts, Brown Foundation, the Kentucky Arts Council, Owensboro Health, the Marilyn and William Young Foundation, the Lawrence and Augusta Hager Educational Foundation, the Public Life Foundation of Owensboro, the City of Owensboro, Western Kentucky Botanical Garden, and the International Center of Owensboro. Thank you to our members of our local host community for joining us today as well. You know who you are, right? If you're not, can you raise your hand if you're on the local guest committee? Nobody here? I know there's somebody here. Well, thank you guys. Lauren, thank you. We are truly excited to learn with all of you this weekend. And we're truly excited for this conversation on the panel. And so now I'll introduce our wonderful moderator, Cheryl Burks-McCarthy. Cheryl works at the Daviess County Extension, and Cheryl's an extension assistant for all areas for the Martin Gatton College of Agriculture, Food and Environment. She serves as the board chair for Building Stronger Families Council, which is positive parenting in home program, and serves as a board member for the center, a community resource center for children and families in the Green River area. She's also serves as Family Resource Youth Services Advisory Council member for the Audubon Elementary. Is that right? Am I saying this right? Am I rambling?
Keep going.
Okay. She's got a lot. We're going to keep going. Oh, that's my place. College View Middle School, Highland Elementary, Newton Parish Elementary, and the Sogro West Louisville, which is just down the road. I think we passed it on the way in, right? She's a Greater Owensboro Chamber of Commerce Ambassador, a 2023 Leadership Owensboro graduate, a 2023-24 Kentucky Rural Urban Exchange cohort member. Yeah, keep it coming. A member of the NAACP Owensboro branch number 3107. And on the planning committee. Planning committee of Nancy Bowles, Project of Owensboro. And in her free time, Cheryl likes to read, spend time with family. So without further ado, Cheryl!
And not stop it, I mean keep it coming. I just looked down and noticed that my foot is about to pop out of my shoe, so if y'all see it, don't say nothing. I'm so happy I did not wear one of my wigs today, because this would have been a whole different deal. I am so happy.
Mike.
Oh, yeah. Oh, am I not loud?
No. And we're recording.
Okay. So, hi everybody.
Oh, turn it on. I don't think it's done.
They unplugged it.
They unplugged. Did they do that on purpose?
Joel's coming.
Hello.
There.
Hello.
Yeah.
And there we are. Okay, I'm so happy happy that you all are here today. We've got a wonderful panel. I think that you're going to learn some really important information about agriculture across the state and specifically in Daviess County. When I was asked to do this panel, Ashton called me and I was just over the moon. Agriculture is something that is near and dear to my heart. And so I'm just so happy to be with you all today and to be in this position. I work a lot with young people, and I wanted to make sure that one of our, maybe a student, someone young in the community could come and be a part of this panel. And a couple of years ago, I heard this young woman speak, and she talked about a pretty serious subject. And so we're going to dive right on in. And so our first subject that we're going to talk about is mental health in agriculture. So we know that mental health is on everyone's mind, and I know that farmers are not immune to this. There's a wonderful program created by the University of Kentucky College of Nursing and the College of Agriculture to bring awareness to that issue. And numerous community partners here in Daviess County put on the Barn Dinner Project, and Barn stands for Bringing Awareness Right Now. Chloe Ebelhar was a part of that program, and this panel is very familiar with it. I heard Chloe speak, like I said, a couple of years ago, and so she is here to read her award-winning essay. It's been altered a little bit, she made some changes with it over the past couple of years, but I think that it is something that is very important, and so I'm going to let Chloe read her speech.
It's a little long, so y'all
Make it longer.
ready? Yeah. Okay. Throughout each of our lives, we all experience a type of situation that entails some form of anguish or despair. If you haven't experienced such, it's quite possible that potentially in the future you may. But first, I think I should indicate what exactly mental health is, its importance, as well as the different stigmas surrounding it. Mental health includes our psychological, emotional, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. It also helps determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make healthy choices. It's important at every stage of life, from childhood all the way through adulthood. Mental health stigma refers to societal disapproval, or when society places shame on people who live with a mental illness. Mental illnesses in agriculture are real, whether we like it or not, and the fact that mental health is stigmatized is an injustice in itself. Like Martin Luther King Jr. said, injustice found anywhere is without a doubt a threat to justice everywhere. Unfortunately, my family is familiar with the matter of suicide and substance abuse. In the short years that I've been alive, I've already experienced 2 family deaths that resulted from suicide. Both of my family members lost hope in the will to live. Both decided once and for all to end their lives. By making this decision, they left their sisters brotherless, their parents heartbroken, and their family devastated. I'm saddened to say that situations like these are starting to become common in agriculture. After speaking to Dale Dobson with the Kentucky Department of Agriculture on many occasions, his advice was to start a conversation, which is why this is something that I can no longer allow myself to ignore, especially as I have come to realize that I have some of these issues myself. No matter how nervous I get, I will take action, and I will speak out on this prevalent topic. You see, even though I'm only 17 years old, I've already seen firsthand how environmental factors and stress can push a person to their breaking point. Struggling citizens drown themselves in alcohol or even drugs so they can escape the reality of the hardships they face. I'm ashamed to say that even though I've been exposed to the topic at hand, I wasn't even remotely aware of how prominently crippling this issue is until I agreed to write this speech. The stigmas for mental health issues in agriculture is so great that when I told a friend I was giving a speech on this topic, she said, and I quote, "Ew, that's disgusting." And to be honest, I couldn't help but become infuriated. Those who suffer from substance abuse and addiction are often demonized by peers, even when the circumstances aren't in their control. Farmers may actually fear visiting a mental health facility because of the chances that word could get back to loan officers or other powerful farm community members that may possibly take advantage of their disposition. Also, these men and women are aware of the fact that they can't take antidepressants or anxiety medication and still work farm equipment. They can't take time off for therapy sessions either because they have a livelihood to maintain. No farmer wants to be the person that loses a multi-generational farm. But today, the sad reality we face consists of situations like these. Recently, food prices have skyrocketed due to disruptions in the supply chain, adverse weather, COVID-19, and rising energy prices. These issues come as farmers around the globe face an array of challenges, including drought and ice storms that are ruining crops, rising prices for fertilizer and fuel, and pandemic-related labor shortages that make it difficult to get products to market. Therefore, external challenges are piling up in addition to the cost of production. So whether you consider the ever-increasing H-2A wage rate, the availability of labor, competition for farmland, or regulatory uncertainty, there are many compounding challenges that are completely outside of our control. These issues are leaving thousands upon thousands of farmers with an invisible force bearing down on their shoulders, and some break under that immense pressure. Isolated and presented with limited access to health care, men and women everywhere are reverting to taking their lives or handing themselves over to alcohol or opioids. Suicide rates in agriculture are statistically 5 times higher than the national average, and even double the rate for those seen in veterans. Our fellow citizens are drinking pesticides, and a majority of us have absolutely no idea. Environmental and economic concerns often combine with general farm business and family challenges, leading to unwanted mental health stress. One consequence of this mental health stress may be suicide. Others could include alcohol or drug abuse, biophysical responses such as heart or blood pressure issues, domestic abuse, and more. I believe that it's our duty as citizens in ag communities to spread awareness towards this plague-like issue. All farmers and citizens need to be educated on the topic at hand, so that those who do struggle are able to receive adequate help instead of slowly drowning in a pool of despair. Speeches on stress management, behavioral techniques, managing mental health, or even a slideshow over the signs to look for in depressed or anxious people could be given at local businesses or schools so that farmers could attend and receive critical information. For example, last year, the University of Kentucky led a program called BAR, which is bringing awareness right now, where teens performed skits and I gave a speech regarding mental health and agriculture to community members. And while it's not as efficient as counseling, medical care, peer support, or treatment, it will indubitably allow people to become more aware of these issues. Another example of a way to raise awareness is the Challenge Point Initiative, which was started by members of the Dixie Ag Safety Team. The program involves a handshake, a coin, and a pledge made by the person accepting the coin to reach out to someone if they are depressed or have thoughts of suicide. I personally have made this pledge, as well as multiple of my friends, teachers, and farmers that I have presented the coin to. Demonstrations like these could open the eyes of the unknowing members in our society. And if even one life is saved because someone chose their life over suicide and addiction, then the efforts of advocates won't be in vain, and it will pave the road to helping countless others battle their struggles. Recently, mental health hotlines for farmers have also been created in multiple states. Workers have reported all types of issues that come up across the line, such as farm disasters, discussing debt and rising prices, as well as financial problems due to fluctuations in the market. This hotline is a tremendous step towards the betterment of mental health issues in agriculture. These struggling individuals crave a connection with someone, and the hotline workers are able to provide just that. Living and working conditions in the countryside often hide the very harsh realities of poverty, unemployment, lack of access to health care, and the presence of common mental health disorders, all of which account for some of the risk factors for suicidal behavior in rural populations. In the letter from Birmingham jail, King asks, so the question is not whether we will be extremists, but what kind of extremists we will be. Extremists for hate or love? Extremists for the preservation of injustice or for the extension of justice? If being an extremist means loving one another, then be an extremist. If being an extremist means embracing those who struggle, then why not be an extremist? Why not help support those in need? If your words have the sheer power to save a person's life, why shouldn't you speak them? Stigma arises from a lack of information, ignorance, and prejudice, which eventually leads to discrimination against people with mental illnesses. Farmers with these illnesses aren't just treated cruelly, but feel as if they can't speak for themselves in order to get help. If we were all to show kindness every day, to be extremists for love instead of hate, then chances are maybe one life could be saved from suicide. Instead of criticizing a farmer, thank them for their hard work. Reach out to them, communicate, and support the very people that work to feed our world. Research has even demonstrated that public awareness campaigns can have a positive impact on stigma, openness, and the perceived value of professional help. Therefore, I call you to action, and I call you to be an extremist for life, so that no individual has to feel such despair that they decide to end it all. Thank you.
you all see why I wanted her to be a part of this panel. And it's young people like Chloe that are making a difference, that are going to be out there and are just pulling people in and talking about those hard topics. And I know that that was a really hard topic, but it was something that was so important to me that it had to be a part of our panel. So thank you, Chloe. I would like to take this time to allow the other panel members to speak on the subject of mental health, if you would like.
Testing. Oh, it's working. Okay.
Yeah, they turned yours on.
They turned mine on. Chloe, thank you. That was beautiful. I've heard it several times, and it really touches the heart. I sit on the board of our Daviess County Farm Bureau, and back when Barn came here, we started a campaign that you're not alone. And with the help of the hospital and other groups, what we did was we had banners and out everywhere in farmers' fields. You're not alone. We even had some of our directors, our board of directors, on their Facebook pages said, "You're not alone, call me," and put their own phone number on there. And I spoke at the Farm City Breakfast when Chloe did, and it was on this topic. And one of the most important things I said was the first responders. These are the people that can help the farmers. And by first responders, I mean the guys over there at the pantry that you eat breakfast with. The guys over there at the hardware store where you pick up some bolts and nuts. Those are the first responders. They can see if there's a difference in you. They can see if you're tired or angry, or they can feel that. Your banker. These are the first responders. They need to start the conversation with the farmer, because those are the first responders, and they can really help save a life.
Yeah, with the Kentucky Young Farmers Association, we've had several, we have a state convention every year, and the last couple of years we've really had a lot of focus on mental health and farm safety and that kind of thing too. And Jim and I were talking about earlier, I mean, last night's storm came through. It's one of those, it wasn't really a bad storm, but 3 weeks ago when we had 12 inches of rain here, I mean, it was on the top of your mind. And I find myself, I was out driving around looking at fields, and you're just like, man, it's all this work for nothing, it's gone. And but like Joni said too, though, I mean, you've got, farmers have to have a relationship with their neighbor, with their equipment dealer, with their seed rep, whatever. I mean, we always have somebody to call them to vent to and bounce ideas off of. And most of those guys I talk to on a daily basis, if not once or twice a week. And it's just one of those things that everybody, at the end of the day, they all want you to realize that they're all in it too. I mean, I know out on this end with the produce and with Jim and the cattle and everything, and everybody's got a different mindset or a different occupation of what they're doing, but we're all in this together, and we're all dependent on Mother Nature, and it's amazing how much Mother Nature can really kind of change your mindset. So,
just to kind of reiterate what everybody said, we have some great partners in Owensboro and Daviess County that are kind of on the forefront of mental health for everyone, but especially in the ag community. That's not been something that's really been a focus until the past few years. The focus on mental health within the ag community, and not only the Farm Bureau, but the Extension office here in Daviess County has been a big proponent of, like everybody said, talking to people, whether it's a counselor, your friends, just seek the help that you need. And we are lucky where we are that we have the support for the ag community for the mental health issue. So, and I'd like to thank Chloe, because she was kind of a big part of helping get that started here in our community. So her speech and her family's story has been a lot to a lot of people in our area too. So that kind of helped propel the discussion. So
I agree with pretty much what all of them have said. The friends and neighbors that you're around are more apt to see the change first. And farming is a really high stress level, and everything can be going great, and you do the same things you've done for years and everything's great. And one storm come through and just devastate you, and you think all your hard work is just gone. And just having those conversations with friends, even a lighthearted moment to just kind of, sometimes you laugh to keep from crying when that happens, and you just hope that you can make it through the year and try again. So having that, a good attitude and having the right people supporting you is a big, big deal.
What about you, Mr. Lamb? Okay, so first question, or second question, what geographic advantages or disadvantages do we have in this region as it relates to agriculture? What geographic advantages or disadvantages do we have in this region as it relates to agriculture?
Well, a couple of the big things I see, obviously, is our location to the river. Helps us tremendously with the grain. We get a premium over a lot of places because we have that barge access. That's one of the main features. The other thing is location in any area. We are so central, with such a central location, whether it's grain or produce or anything, close to everywhere. So that's another big factor. And we also don't have necessarily the extreme temperatures and weather that some places do. We kind of get a mixture of all of it, and none of them last too long. It's not like deep south, it's not like the far north. So we have a little longer growing season. We have, what we do have doesn't usually last too long and not too severe compared to most places.
And we also, here in Daviess County, it's very diverse. Out on the east end, it's rolling hills, and we have a lot of cattle, and we have a lot of poultry farms and some grain. But over here on the west side, a lot of grain, it's flat. So we have a big diversity in our county alone, and that's a good thing for us. And like Keith said, our location to the river, and now that we have an interstate link from here down to Bowling Green for the trucking, that's a big thing too, to get these crops to market.
Yeah, just kind of ditto to everybody that's spoke so far. I mean, the grain is the biggest side. I'm just a grain farmer. I don't raise cattle or anything, but Joni and I were talking earlier. I mean, we've got five grain elevators here within probably a 15-mile, 20-mile radius. So last year, whenever the river levels were down, I mean, everybody remembers the Mississippi River being down at record lows, and that affected the barge traffic up here, so we couldn't get rid of the grain up here. Well, we've got a Tyson plant, we've got a Purdue plant. Owensboro Grain is they're a soybean crusher, so we've got other options here as far as getting rid of the grain. So the river plays a huge factor. Like he said, this weather amazes me through here because I've seen I don't know how many storms in my lifetime. I'm only 28, but I don't know how many storms I've seen go through Owensboro or just this area of Daviess County and completely split. It'll go north of the river, it'll go south of the river. Fortunately, this past week was the hottest we've had in a while, and luckily it's not going to last too long. And the old saying, if you don't like the weather in Kentucky, stick around. 'Cause it's probably going to be different next week. Because it is. I mean, it's next week they're showing back in the 80s, and we were really dry early on this year, and now we've been fortunate, pretty much rain every week. So.
What they said. No. No, we are. That's right. Being the last one is hard, so you repeat a lot. But really, we have very fertile soils in our area, so that's something that we're very blessed to have in our area. No matter where you are in the county, we're very blessed to have the fertile soils that we have, especially along the Ohio River. The Ohio River is great for the export and imports that we have to bring in and out of Owensboro, Daviess County, and even further beyond agriculture. Even what comes in and out of the river or is transported on the river plays a big part in the economics of Daviess County as well. So it's great that we have what we have in terms of the river port and the other other places up and down the Ohio and Green River here in Daviess County. But the ground along all the river bottoms is also something. The access to water, whether we have to irrigate or just our access to water is plentiful in this area. We don't have to drill very far. If you have to dig wells or anything, you don't have to go extremely deep to be able to bring water up. We have a lot of aquifers under our area, so just a lot of pluses to just our area where we are. If you go, further south, it's a whole lot harder to drill. If you have to put in a well to get water, it becomes very expensive. So we're pretty lucky to be where we are in terms of that. So, and ditto.
Cole, you spoke to this briefly. Can you talk about how your businesses have been affected by the global supply chain issues?
Yeah, so I work two sides of it. So I'm a seed rep for Syngenta. Syngenta is a competitor to Monsanto. Most everybody's heard of Monsanto or Bayer. So I've got a little access between seeing both on the global side with Syngenta and as well as the local side here. It's one of those things that the market fluctuates like crazy. I mean, it's just like the stock market. Somebody can make a comment on Facebook or a tweet or something that's going to go one way or the other, good or bad. And it's amazing to me in my lifetime to see how much globally that we all need to work together on the agriculture side, and how the agriculture influences every other aspect of human life out there.
So in my farming operation, I raise row crops. I do corn, soybeans. We still raise a little bit of tobacco. We raise beef cattle, and I have a retail store on our farm where we sell protein, so beef, pork, chicken, and a lot of other stuff from across the state. So I have seen what Cole has talked about in terms of the supply chain of being able to get the seed, or if we need certain chemicals, the inability to get them, or the tight demand for them has definitely been seen in terms of even the retail store. A lot of the businesses that I source products from, whether it's canned goods, dark goods, even if they're small mom and pop places from across the state, we've seen issues in supply chain for glass jars. So if you're canning, we sell a lot of jams, relishes, and all that kind of stuff. We've had and not able to get stuff as efficiently as we were previously because people can't get jars or the lids for the jars. So there's just a massive backup in all of that. So I've seen it kind of on the consumer side as well, just the lack of being able to get stuff as efficiently as we were. And there's all kinds of stuff that can contribute to that, whether it's all kinds of stuff. So.
Well, I can talk to that on two different levels because I'm with Hayden Electric Incorporated and then Hayden Farms. And the electrical business, it's a nightmare. It has been a nightmare. I can wire up a strip mall, but I can't put a service on it because the service is 365 days out. And we've got empty malls because we can't get services on them. And we do a lot of work with farmers all over the state and down into Tennessee, wiring grain bins, and I can't get the parts that I need to get those grain bins finished, and they're going to be harvesting here in another month. So that's a problem, both sides. In the operation of the farming, we don't do row crops. We're poultry and livestock, and so. When you're a poultry grower, you grow for an entity. We grow for Purdue. They furnish the feed and they furnish the birds. We have to furnish the houses, utilities, and take care of the birds. Now, the only problem we see there is just the rising cost of your utilities because we have everything else. But, and even in the livestock, sometimes you can't get feed right away when you need it for your cattle. But as far as that, we're not with the row crops where we're looking at those entities that you need. But when you need parts for your machines, all of these trucks, all of these tractors, guess what? You can't get them. They're not here. You can't get them, or they're months and months out. And so that is a problem for everybody.
I agree with what they all said. What I was going to say, what Joan just said about the tractor parts last year, there were some things that were on back order for months. But also seed, whether it's grain, corn, what have you, even some of the vegetable seed, some of them were not even able to be gotten, or some were way late. So it's a variety of things because of the global supply. So it applies to many things, not only agriculture, other businesses as well. It's become a huge issue.
While doing research for this panel discussion, and by research I mean Google, and some other sources, I learned that in the early 20th century, 15% of America's farms were black owned. Today, of the nearly 76,000 farms in Kentucky, only 1.4%, or roughly 600, are owned by black farmers. I also learned that North American supply chain Cargill has a program called the Black Farmer Equity Initiative that was created to address racial inequality or inequity with the goal of increasing participation, profitability, and production for black farmers and ranchers. The reason I mention Cargill is that they recently purchased Owensboro Grain, which was a fifth-generation family-owned soybean processing facility and refinery that's here in Daviess County. If you work with them, can you speak to any changes that have taken place since this purchase?
So my family works with Owensboro Grain, or still called Owensboro Grain. Owensboro Grain, a cargo company now. So we sell, whether it's soybeans or corn, to Owensboro Grain for them to then move down the river to other processing facilities, or the majority of the soybeans that they take in, they are processing themselves to, they are, like Cole mentioned earlier, they're a crushing facility, soybean crushing facility, which the numbers of those are growing across the country and across the state, but they're probably one of the largest ones right now. So they crush the soybeans they make soybean oil, diesel fuel, the main thing, so we use all those products through the line. But the main thing is the feed byproduct from crushing and getting the oil is the feed byproduct. And we use a lot of that. That's primarily what we feed to our beef cattle, are the soybean hulls that they make at Owensboro Grain. So the only thing that I've really noticed is if you're selling grain to Owensboro Grain, the check has changed. So the name on the check. So a lot of the things, just the name. No, not the amount. Just well, that changes monthly. So depending on the market. But no, just the name on the check. So I think a lot of the changes that are happening at Owensboro Grain are more internal than external. A lot of the consumers aren't going to see a whole lot of the changes right now. The only main thing that we may see is Owensboro Grain has always been a big supporter of the Owensboro community. Several nonprofits have benefited from Owensboro Grain and their charitable giving throughout the years. They have vowed to continue that. The family that owned Owensboro Grain was huge supporters of just nonprofits and different events and whatever in Owensboro. And a lot of times they were silent partners in a lot of that too. They just believed in a lot of things and would donate, and they didn't want the recognition. So, but the Cargill has kind of reassured that would still remain. A lot of the support that Owensboro Grain had done throughout the years, that they will still continue to do that. And we still do see Owensboro Grain on a lot of things throughout the community since they've taken ownership, that they are still supporting. So that's kind of really the only thing that I've noticed right now with the purchase of Owensboro Grain by Cargill.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we haul about half of the grain that I produce, we haul to Owensboro Grain. The other half usually goes to Gavilon, which is another elevator on up the river a little bit. A lot of it just depends on the local pricing. Owensboro usually has a lot better pricing on soybeans just because they do crush and they do use them in-house. Really on the grain side, whenever you come into the elevator, you've got a truckload of soybeans or corn, you come into the elevator, you go up to the scale house, they weigh you, they check your moisture, and then, you basically go up to the lady at the office and tell her, hey, it's going on, it's from this farm, this is a landowner, that way, so they know how to split the checks. So, as far as the Cargill side, on hauling grain in, you really don't see much of a difference on that, because it's the same employees. The marketer that I call, the broker more or less, he's the same guy. He's still Austin. I mean, he's still the same guy every day. So there's not a lot of differences there. It's crazy to see how, as we've transitioned from, when I first started farming 7 years ago on my own, I mean, I grew up working for a farmer, and it was always, the smaller elevators, family-owned elevators. With the purchase of Owensboro Grain by Cargill, Avalon up there, the other elevator I mentioned, they recently got bought out by Viterra, which recently got bought out by Bunge. So we go from a small local family, town more or less to a large corporate, environment now. But the same way with farming, it's the same way with everything. It's pretty much the survival of the fittest, and most of the options on people is either get bigger or get out, unfortunately. And but I think Owensboro Grain, like Jim said, I mean Owensboro has been a huge part of our community here for a long time now. They sponsor a lot of things, pretty much any convention or anything we put on, whether it's even Friday after 5 down on the riverfront where we have bands and stuff come in and play every weekend. I mean, it's still sponsored by Owensboro Grain, so very integral part in our community. And I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of differences. And I think Cargill's knowing coming in that they've got some big shoes to fill, they've got some big roles to fill, and they're going to try to do everything they help in the community, they can to help the community out and keep that name going. So.
Well, like I said, we do not do row crops, but in the situation where I sit on the board of the Chamber of Commerce and OCTC and Daviess County Farm Bureau, for a big reason, because that brings agriculture to other aspects of our community, just with Cargill. That way we can get them involved. They can see the benefit and the importance of agriculture, not just in our county, but in our whole community, what we have to offer. But you've got to be, as far as agriculture, you've got to be involved in everything to have your voice heard. You can't just sit back there and raise your crop and support agriculture, because these people out here that don't know anything about agriculture, they've got to hear your voice. And with Cargill, I think we can use them because they are very ag-oriented, and I think they will be a big voice for us as far as agriculture throughout our community. But that's the big thing. You have to be involved. You've got to be involved to tell your story. You can't tell it to your neighbor. They've got the same story. You've got to tell it to everybody else.
I think they covered it well. I'm going to pass.
Ashton, how are we on time? Okay. So I think that you all have heard some pretty important information today. Maybe some things that you knew, maybe some things that you also had some questions about in your local area. If you have a question, we'll open that up for questions at this time. In the back. I need louder. Can I get the mic? Whole panel.
Is there a sense of competition between these different farms that are on the same road?
Oh, you're gonna take that.
It is, well, you've got neighbors, then you've got enemies, right? Just like everybody else. No, I mean, pretty much everybody around here is here to help each other out. Overall, yes, there's competition when it comes to buying ground or when it comes to acquiring new ground. If a farm comes up for a lease, there's 20 people knocking at your door. It's competition, but it's friendly competition for the most part. I think overall everybody gets along really well together around here. With my travels with the company I work for, a lot of areas are not so fortunate. There's a lot of cutthroat, farmers out there that are just bidding up steel ground and stuff like that. Around here, we're pretty fortunate that it's not that case, but there's a lot of areas where you got one big farmer, that farms most of the area, and nobody else can survive around him just because they can't get the acres that he does. So around here, there's a balance of smaller farmers, there's a balance of bigger farmers, there's some corporate farmers around here. So it's a good balance around here. But yes, there's quite a bit of competition, but it's one of those things, like if I've got a farm right next to Keith's, I'm not gonna go knock on his landowner's door, just because. At the end of the day, if my combine breaks down and he's done, most likely I'm gonna call him and say, hey, can you come help me get my crop out? I had a similar situation this year. My planter broke down right towards the end of the planting season. A buddy of mine that we trade work back and forth with, he was kind enough to let me borrow his to finish out the last 100 acres I had, and that's just, you're there to scratch each other's back. You're not there to stab each other's back. So.
I wanted to add to that. One of my neighbors recently passed away. It was a farming family, and a lot of the local farmers came together and helped bring in the crops and help take care of those people. So it is a close-knit community in some aspects. Savannah? Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I'm not a great yeller. So the largest land transition that's happened in this country happened during the pandemic, with more and more corporations and high net worth individuals buying up farmland that they've never even seen. Bill Gates is the largest landowner in the country, right? Lots of people from overseas are buying up Kentucky cropland. Are y'all seeing that in this community? And what's the conversation like that? What's the conversation locally and across the state about how to keep Kentucky farms in the hands of Kentuckians?
I don't know of any personally right here in Daviess County, but it's definitely happening all across the country, and I don't know if it's as much in Kentucky, but it's definitely a concern. I think we should definitely be concerned about it.
Well, just to reiterate what Keith said, I don't see it in Daviess County. That doesn't mean it's not coming, but as Cole was saying a while ago, if there's any cropland or anything for sale, you're going to see farmers there, and that's what it's all about. In fact, they may get together before they get there and know who's going to buy it, but okay, I'm not going to push that because I know he wants it and what he's going to do with it. That's how they work together, but we don't see that here in our area.
Yeah, I'd agree with both Joan and Keith said. I don't know of anyone in our area that, or any purchasers. I know probably in surrounding counties there have been a little bit more of that. I think the main thing is just the amount of capital that it takes now to buy farmland, whether it's for farm use or whether it's going to be developed. It's a massive undertaking financially for anyone, and that's where you see, unfortunately, a lot of these outside folks coming in that have the ability to get that capital and buying it. So the main thing is, if that does happen, we hope that they would still, if they're retaining it for farm use, is that they would still use the local farmers to hopefully run that ground.
Aside part of that question, are y'all seeing associations and statewide networks and stuff come together to try and get out ahead of that?
There's I saw a while back recently up in Indiana, I believe, that they've got an association together that's trying to basically outlaw all these foreign entities from coming in and buying, farmland and that kind of thing. Because it hasn't been locally, so to speak. I haven't noticed anything that's really been bought up by some, name I can understand. So, but no, I think we're lucky because we haven't really seen that yet. I think it's probably on the cuff, but it's something that hasn't hit locally here, locally. So, but I think something we all need to be concerned on.
But no, to answer your question, I don't know of any state group that's really come together to kind of counteract that. So.
But I think it's been talked about at the Kentucky Farm Bureau, and that's a huge organization. They have like 480,000 members in the state, and that they are the voice of agriculture. And I know they have discussed discussed it many times, but they haven't got a group yet.
So I know that we've got a lot of questions. If we could just limit it to maybe one response. Jill.
Sorry, I just like to talk, y'all.
So a number of us are from the city, and I think it's no secret that there are urban-rural divides in Kentucky and beyond, and I think that's what we're trying to bridge. So I'm curious, as a city person, like what are the misconceptions about farmers from people who are not part of this community?
I did say I like to talk. I think one misperception is that we are uneducated. The rural community is uneducated, and that is far from the truth. So I have a bachelor's degree. Not that that means anything, but there are several people that have 4+ year college degrees that are in agriculture that solely farm. We have to know so much about so many different things, whether it's financial, we have to be livestock veterinarians on the side because we can't have access all the time to veterinarians. I have to be a crop consultant for myself to know what's wrong with my crop and how to fix it. I mean, the list can go on and on and on. Keith has so much he has to do with vegetables and figuring out, all the things, the pests that attack vegetables, the poultry industry. So I think for me, the biggest thing is that the misperception that we are an uneducated group of individuals, and that is far from it. And I know I said a bachelor's degree, but there are so many people that don't have a college education at all that are so much smarter than me, that do so much more within our community, for not only agriculture, but the community as a whole. So I don't know, that's my two cents on that, so.
Yeah, real quick, I mean, I've got a bachelor's degree as well, and it's one of those that most farmers, have gone to college at some point. Every ag business person, has gone to college pretty much. And I think the common misconception too is that farmers are not trying to kill the world. I don't know how many conversations I've got in with GMOs and pesticides, herbicides, and I'm not trying to open a can of worms, but those things, those products, whether it's a GMO corn or whether it's, all these products are needed to be sustainable in this day and age to feed this population. I mean, this population right now has grown too exponentially for us, to even fathom feeding it without it. We all like seeing sweet corn that doesn't have earworms in it, right? I mean, nobody wants an earworm eating on their sweet corn whenever they're trying to cook it. Apples, same way. You don't want, worms growing in and out of apples. All this stuff is needed to produce the produce that we like to have and that we enjoy every day. Same way on moving farm equipment. We don't like moving farm equipment on the roads any more than y'all like getting behind us. Trust me. I don't know how many near misses I've had in my 7 years farming. I don't know how many near misses I've had, from people being on their phones, not paying attention. Guys, we want to get off the roads just as much as y'all do. I had one lady stop me one day and she said, "Why don't you just own a tractor for every farm you have?" And I said, I chose my words carefully, and I said, "Are you sure you want the answer to that?" And she just kind of got in her car and went on and gave me the bird and went on. But I'm like, okay, it's common sense, people. And we don't, our equipment's oversized. We have to be oversized to get the amount of work done in a day that we need to get done. We've got a short, with the weather situations that we've had, we have extremely short windows to get it in, get it out. But yeah, the biggest thing is we're not out there to hurt you all. We're not out there to hurt the community. I don't know anybody that really likes driving a tractor on the road as it is.
One last thing on that, and that is the land is their way of life. They take better care of that land than anybody ever could because it is their way of life. If they weren't careful with their pesticides or their everything, just our animals, our grazing, we've got 200 mama cows. We've got to make sure the grasses they're eating are good for them. And we take better care of that land than anybody possibly could. No, we're not trying to poison anybody or anything else. we are the conservationists of the land because it is our way of life.
One thing to add to that, a lot of people don't realize I was in Mexico on a vegetable tour 25 years ago. And we're restricted on many chemicals that we can use on any of our crops, but especially vegetables. In Mexico, they can spray about anything, and only or less than 1% of the produce that comes in the United States from Mexico is even inspected for that. So, you know, people say, well, there's chemicals on this. We use the very minimum that we can because our families are eating this food as well. And a lot of people don't realize that they go to the grocery or wherever, but what's coming in from other countries, you have no idea what they put on it. They're not restricted. So, like Joan said, the land and our animals and everything is how we make our living. We take the best possible care we can because it's our livelihood and how we feed our families.
Talk soft, so I can't project very well. Thank you all for doing what you do. I am on a 7th generation family farm in Breckenridge County. We grow organic vegetables and sell them in Louisville. So we certify organic because that's our customer base. In RUX, we talk about asking difficult questions and leaning in with love. So I have 2 questions from that intention of a difficult question, leaning in with love. And so to get to one of Cheryl's points of the historic dispossession of black farmers from their farmland, that was actually USDA policy to take land from black farmers. And so in some of the farming ag conversations that I'm in the Organic Association of Kentucky and some of like that siloed conversation, we're having those conversations about like, what can we do about this? What programs can we implement? And so my question is, are you all having conversations in your ag groups about that issue and developing programs to address it? And so then my second question is, as I was mentioning, we're siloed in our conversations, and one of the things that we say as a farm is if you're still farming, then you're doing something right. It's really difficult to continue to be a farmer with the get big or get out policy. So as an organic farmer, I have no judgments of the ways that you're farming. If you're still farming, you're doing something right. But I think that we need to, I think we have judgments of each other. And so my question is twofold, like how do we get past those judgments to build relationships across the farming sectors? And then similarly, like I said, I'm in conversations in Louisville where there are urban plots of agriculture that we would probably call a community garden, right? And not take seriously as part of the agricultural system, but it's plots of land that are actually feeding people. And so how do we expand the definition of agriculture to be on a spectrum and to all be on the same team?
Well, one of the things as far as trying to engage the black farmers, I know the University of Kentucky, and they're with Extension, they work on some programs for that. I sit on the state board, and they are trying to develop some programs to entice them, some black farmers back into the agriculture field. And your community gardens, I know a couple were started here by some of the churches, and what they found, several of them, what they found is that like halfway through the summer, all of a sudden nobody's showing up to help and they're turning to weeds, that type of thing. And that's just a matter of, like you said, a conversation to get more people involved. And it's not, none of us are corporate farmers or anything, but because the population of the farmers, we're less than 3% of the population, we've got to do more with less. And the population is continuing to grow and our land is continuing to go. So we've got to do more with less. And we do the best we can to take care of the land, to do that, to feed the people.
I'll also just add briefly, Joan mentioned the extension, state extension. I'm on a different state extension board, still with the cooperative extension, and we had a meeting this past week, and through the outreach that extension does, that is one of the things that on the committee that I'm on is one of the top things that they're working on. We're getting ready to do a new plan of action, I guess, for the state, and that's one of the points on their plan of action is how to engage more black farmers for the entire state. So it is a statewide conversation that is being talked about. So.
Yes, Mike, please.
Yeah, so I run a Louisville seed bank up in the city, and so it used to be just based on policy from the city level. It was illegal to actually have a garden higher than 10 inches tall for about 90 years in the city of Louisville, up until it got changed last year. And so we have about 400 varieties of just heirloom seeds that have been given to us from just different people. And I wanted to ask, what in the current state of farming, how do heirloom seeds and how do telling stories of seed saving and preserving that family legacy and that story, how does that factor into also creating yield and being able to grow crops and where's the mixture there? Because I know that heirloom seeds are so important and they're able to survive so well in climates that we have here. But what role does that play in your life?
Well, heirloom seed, I mean, it's a good tomato, but it's some of it on the tomato side of it, but they don't produce, there's a lot more ways to an heirloom. They're harder to grow. It's not one of your higher yielding for production. I mean, it's a good tomato, but if you're trying to feed people, that wouldn't be your ideal source. Not that it doesn't taste good or there's anything wrong with it, it's just not going to be one of your higher producing ones.
I know our local library here, they have a seed library, that's a bank too. And it's like you said with the heirloom seeds, I think they're mostly for home gardens. It's not for like what Keith does on a large scale to feed everybody. So, but they are for home gardens, and they do push that here. The library does great with that seed bank. Thank you.
Savannah wants me to ask a question to the group, just for the panel to kind of. Did you have a question first, Isaac? Go for it. After this, I'll ask.
I just had a kind of a follow-up to Savannah's question. I think that's still true after the pandemic, that in the next 20 years, mostly because of the age of farmers across the country, there will be at least 50% of the land will change ownership in one way or another. And like Savannah was mentioning, with the trends of larger corporations and big stakeholders buying up big plots of land, I just wondered, I guess this is a question mostly for you as a young farmer representative, what's your sort of emotional feeling about that, and how what do you see on the landscape as far as families retaining farmers, in that lineage versus expanding to new populations? We're talking about black farmer reclamation of land. I think there's like so many different possibilities, but there's also this anxiety about it that I wonder if you could just speak to that. Sorry, it's a huge question.
So I've, ever since I was born, I've been riding a tractor or combine. My first combine ride, I think I was 16 or 18 months old, so I've been around farming all my life. My family didn't farm. Growing up, I'm a true first generation farmer, started on my own. Worked for a farmer growing up for 8 or 10 years, loved it, and then, kind of got an opportunity to go on my own and do my own thing. So my grandfather farmed originally in Union County, and then they sold out, whenever times got tough. Back in the 60s and 70s, they sold out. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to be that generation to continue that. So what I run into all the time. So I was very heavily involved in my local FFA chapter in high school, the Future Farmers of America in high school. And looking back now, I think out of the officer team that I was in and my close group of friends I was in, me and one other young guy are the only ones that are engaged in agriculture at all right now. It's really astounding. I think overall what's probably is the biggest challenge on most younger generation farmers is just finding the help, finding the people, finding the manpower. That's the biggest struggle. A lot of young people nowadays, they don't want to work. They don't want to work that hard. It's hard to find somebody, once you find good help and train them to the way you want to do work, they leave and go somewhere else because they're always trying to chase that dollar. And I don't blame people for trying to better themselves at all. I mean, that's the name of the game, is to better yourself. But, just the way I've looked at it, I mean, I do 95% of the work myself. My father helps me, move from field to field, that kind of thing. But most of the daily operations I do myself, just for the fact that you can't hardly find somebody to help you that isn't going to cost you an arm or a leg. They're not, if I took somebody just at random and told them, hey, I'm going to throw you in a $100,000 combine, you're going to cringe a little bit, because that's, if something happens, and everybody makes mistakes, but at the end of the day, I've got to pay for that repair. And so finding those people that are just, grown up in agriculture, want to work on the farm is honestly hard to, next to impossible now. Like I said, with the average age of a farmer growing up every year, I mean, it's something I think we all look at, we all worry about. But the number of younger people trying to get into farming is very, very slim.
So the opportunity is there for young people if they want to take it, more or less. But the existing older landowner or family member has to be willing to be able to transition that to the younger person, and that's where the conversations kind of can start to get difficult. So whether it's the family or the individual, I think there are, like Cole said, there's a limited number of young people that are interested in getting involved in agriculture, but those that are interested want to do it and they're willing to work for it. So just getting that transition piece, and it's a conversation that is happening across Daviess County or across the state and really the entire United States. How do we transition that older population to the younger population so that it does stay locally owned or within the community, the ownership. So
I agree with what he's saying on that, and the difference, the land may be passed down and retained ownership to some degree, but if they're not wanting to do it themselves, it's more apt to be sold to down the road. But it's sort of like Joan mentioned earlier about the church gardens and what have you, and how people didn't show up. That's the difference. When you're doing it for the fun of it, or you're doing it for a living to survive, you will do whatever it takes. If it's 18 hours a day, if it's 20 hours a day, you're going to put in the work. And a lot of these younger people don't want that lifestyle. They want something shorter hours and be able to enjoy their time. And that's fine. It's not for everyone. You have to love what you do. And that's the difference. And there's beginning to be less and less people that want that lifestyle and to work those hours. And that does concern me that more of this will become larger owned corporations own the farmland. And they've got more control, and it's just like any other business with more control. It can be devastating to the average person in your families, and what the supply, the price, it's going to have an effect all the way around.
I wanted to, really quick, and then I'll let Daviess, just by a show of hands, how many of you grew up with either a large garden or a garden of some sort around you, or a farm within your family? So we've got a lot of people. Okay, so now, how many of you are still farming in some capacity? Garden count, yeah. Okay. Just to show.
That's encouraging. That is encouraging. Yeah. Because like Jim said a while ago, the opportunities are there. Because farming is not just getting in that tractor out there. It encompasses so much. So much. We, here in our county, our Daviess County cattlemen, we've had a feeder calf program for, this is the 23rd year. Well, I know offhand 4 people that started that program. That's the first thing they'd ever done. And they have farms now, they're raising cattle. They're young people, they're in their 20s, but they work off the farm, but they love it. It's all in who's teaching you and how they're teaching you, and make you love it. I mean, it's the people teaching you that makes a big difference.
We'll do one more question, and then we'll do our pay right.
So I have one observation, and then I have a question. Or not an observation, actually a statement. I am officially a tomato farmer. Yeah. Let me tell you, accidental, totally accidental. I'm actually raising Roma tomatoes. I have 2 plants about that high. Totally accidental. Somebody threw some seeds in my yard. I don't know when and how, but I saw them and I said, I'm going to grow those. I have a squirrel that got into one last night, they tell me. But anyway, I really do have a respect, a great respect. I grew up in Kentucky, and but I went away to the big city and came back, and I have a wonderful respect for farmers. I want to know, along the lines of what we've been talking about, what incentives are there for younger farmers to get into farming? People who actually really do want to do this, what kind of incentives are there for them? And how do they access mentorship and those kinds of things so that they can be successful?
Well, I do know that they're, like the FSA office, they offer really, really low farm rates, interest rates for first-time farmers, and some of your FCA, the farm credit, they combine those. So they have some incentives there to, if they're going to purchase equipment or land, you know, they give them some really low rates, some young farmer rates to start them off. And even at your local FSA office, what they do, because this is what we did with our cattle, our little 4-H FFA, that the kids go and get the loan to buy their little calf. They get it in their name. Their parents do not sign. They sign. And I'm talking, our group starts from 9 to 19. They have to fill out all the paperwork with them. They sign it, and they pay back that loan as soon as they sell their calf in August. But they have to learn the whole bit about the paperwork, about all of the accounting and everything, and keep a record book. But what they found out is that under 18, you can, let's see, what's the amount, Martin, that they can borrow? Up to $10,000 a year, and they were purchasing more calves and starting their own little herd. By the time they graduated from high school, they had their own herd. Okay, but those are some incentives that are there for kids.
I just have an answer. I know UK Extension has a lot, but Kentucky State University has a lot of beginning farmer programs and grant programs, and then there's an organization through UK called K-Card. I cannot remember what it stands for, somebody knows. They do Kentucky Center for Ag and Rural Development, thank you, Jen, that has some like amazing grant workshops that it is, I went to one because I just like to know stuff, and I might be a farmer someday, who knows. There's some really amazing programs that you do not have to be a long-term, big old plot of land. That like, these programs are incredible, and I know a lot of folks in Estill County have gotten stuff through both of those offices. I have a whole binder at my house if y'all want some more information.
Great. Well, I will tell you just a little short joke here, because when we started this program and the kids were able to fill out their paperwork and get their loans at the FSA office, the head loan guy down there, Joe Watson, I knew him, he was a good friend of mine. He said his boss called and said, "What are you all doing down there? You have written more loans than the whole state of Louisiana." And there were about 23 loans written in a week's time for these kids that were filling out this paperwork and going to start their calves. So it was pretty neat.
Well, we want to thank our panelists today. Thank you, Joan. Okay, so let me just